we've machined down the top where we're going to slide our external ferrule over. Okay, so it does fit, but it's not a complete fit. We're actually going to press, or we're going to tap over the rest of it so it presses on, so it's a nice, really tight fit. We're going to use this jig here, so that sleeve just goes over the top. We're going to use our ball peen hammer. We make sure we're on a hard surface here, just on the end of the bench there, the metal part of the bench. So I'll hold that nice and firm. Okay, and we're just going to gently tap that into place. Okay, that now is all pressed on nice and tight, so it's not going anywhere from here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we need to get the measurement of our external ferrule, and we're going to use our outside calipers to measure that, and then we're going to make sure we're going to turn down the rest of our handle to that size. Okay, so we'll take this out. Get your outside calipers and just get them. I like to get slightly oversized. That way we always, so just passing through, get that measurement, load this back into. Okay, so we're going to set our tool rest up. Okay, and from here, what we're going to do is, using our parting tool, we're going to do the same thing that we did here to get the outside, so get that diameter for our external ferrule, but we're going to do the same on a little bit of a larger scale here. So, parting tool, make sure everything's all nice and tight. Again, okay, double check, so we'll start here. Turn this thing on. Start. Okay, stop. We're going to check, just check that that goes through, not quite, so we'll go a little bit more. Okay, that just passes through. I don't want to go any more, okay, because I want to keep that as my reference point. So I'm going to do the same thing. Every roughly 50 mil, I'm going to do the same groove along the rest of this handle. So if we turn this back on, so we'll do another groove there, 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 here. And then what we'll do, so we part those grooves, get them all to the diameter that we want, which is on our outside calipers, and then we'll just close them all up with our roughing gouge and our scraping tool. Okay? So in here. So we'll check, I need to go a little bit more, both of those. Good, and they just push through. So really it's important to stop and check quite frequently so you don't turn down your handle too thin. You don't want to have a handle too thin there. You want it to be at least that diameter. We've turned down all of these grooves and we've got them to the diameter of the outside ferrule, our external ferrule, and we can check them with our outside calipers that they are all the right size. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to use our roughing gouge and we're going to join these all up so that we have one nice handle that is a cylinder and they're all the same diameter. Okay, so let's start over. We'll go from left to right. I'll get the tool post at the right size, and away we go. The handle roughly level. Okay, you can still see here there's a little bit of wavy lines in that. It's a bit rough, and you can still see the bottom of those grooves that we turned down with the parting tool. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to use our scraping tool. So that's got the nice flat face on that, and we're going to use that to come along and just scrape that surface to get just to take the top of it off and get it all nice and smooth, but in particular get it all level there and slightly just a little bit larger in diameter than our external ferrule. So I'll just get this nice and close first. We'll work off this side here. Okay. Turned our handle down, so it's all a nice long cylinder. It's all pretty consistent in its diameter, and it's the same diameter as our external ferrule. It's still a bit rough, so we can touch that up a little bit more with our scraping tool. Before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put our curve on the end. So I'll do that now. We'll use the parting tool, and we'll use our scraping tool to shape it. So we'll just part into that, and then we'll turn our curve on. Just freehand that around that curve there, split it nicely. Okay, so now we have our nice curve on the end. What we'll do is we'll start to sand this. Now you'll notice that it is still pretty rough, okay? That's gonna happen. What we're going to do is we'll get some nice coarse sandpaper, we'll sand it up, we'll take 80 grit sandpaper. Going to spend a fair bit of time with the 80 grit to get all this rough grain out of that timber. Okay, don't rush through the 80 grit too quickly. Okay, if there's still marks in your timber and you go to the 120 or higher grit, that higher grit isn't going to get it out. So you really need to work hard with the 80 grit sandpaper to get it out. Okay, just reach around. We've finished sanding with our 80 grit and our 120 grit sandpapers. We're going to start to hit our surface with a finer coarse sandpaper. We're going to use some wet and dry. So we'll hit it with a couple of different grits. So we'll start off with the 180, then we'll go some 240, and then we'll finally hit it with some 400 wet and dry. Before then, we will put a final application of some burnishing oil to seal that timber there, so that comes up. That oil will also bring out the lines in that grain in the timber quite nicely as well. Okay, so with the wet and dry, same process as how we were sanding with the sandpaper. Wrapping this around and spend a fair bit of time. The more time you spend with the more coarse sandpaper, the easier it's going to be in the long run. Okay, so I've spent quite a fair bit of time just sanding that surface there with my wet and dry. That surface has come up really smooth there. I'm happy to move on to the next step now, which is starting to oil the timber. That will seal it, protect the grain, and it will also really bring out these lines in the timber to highlight them, and they'll just enhance the appearance a whole lot more. So what we're going to use is we just have a nice clean rag. Make sure you have a clean rag. I have some more, a clean sheet of 600 wet and dry, and we have our burnishing oil there. Okay, so when you open the tin of burnishing oil, make sure cover the lid with a nice seal over the rag and just tip a little bit into the rag there. So you have a bit on the rag. Okay, be careful not to spill your oil as you do that. Turn the lathe on and we're just going to apply like this. And we may need to do this a few times. So get that oil. Again. So if we stop, we can already see the grain in the timber and all the features and the pattern in the timber have been highlighted by that oil. Now we can repeat this process about 2 or 3 times. I'm going to also apply some of the oil onto my wet and dry, and I'll sand that oil into my handle. That just helps the oil soak into the grain just that whole lot better. Okay, so we'll do the same here. And finally I'll rub this back. Okay, like I said, repeat this process 2 or 3 times till you have nice even coverage of your oil. It's starting to soak into the grain there. That protects the timber and it gives it a really nice finish as well. Okay. Now,